Hello friends, AmyR here from Prairie Paper and Ink with another video for the Picket Studios YouTube channel. Today we're going to do some really easy metallic watercolor on just black cardstock. Anyone can do this. I've actually shown this many times over the years on my own YouTube channel, and there was a recent release with a Christmas set that I was like, I think this needs some metallic watercolor. So that's what we're going to do. And yeah, as always, links to everything I used will be in the description box below the video. You can just expand it. Everything will be listed and linked for your convenience. And let's get into making these cards. So the stamp set I'm using is the Winter Blooms stamp set. And I have some black cardstock here. And this is specifically Simon Says Stamps black cardstock, which is at least 100 pound weight, but I would guesstimate that it's closer to a good 110 pound weight. It's heavyweight. And I mention that because this works on this black cardstock. If your black cardstock is a much lighter weight, like 80 pound or less, you might run into a bit of trouble with trying to paint onto it with metallic watercolors, etc. We'll get into that. First off, I used my anti-static powder on the cardstock. That just kind of helps the embossing powder from clinging to anything other than the stamped image. And I am inking up and stamping the frame image from this Winter Blooms set with clear embossing ink. Because this set, it comes with the frame that I'm using, and there's also like a floral cluster that you can use either with it or you could use it separately. I didn't use it for this. I used just the frame. And after I stamped it with clear embossing ink, and I used my Altenew Stampwheel to do the stamping. I've had the stamp wheel. I've used it in a couple of my videos. I need to use it more. It takes me a long time to get used to new tools. But the more I'm playing with it, the more I'm enjoying it. So anyway, stamped the image, coated it with some gold embossing powder, melted it with my heat tool, which even after making cards for over 20 years, it'll never not be like magical to watch, especially metallic embossing powder melt. It's just fascinating. And I did all this twice because, if I've got all the supplies out, all the things, and funny enough, my plan was I was going to do one just as black and gold because I love me black, gold, and white cards. Beautiful. Like that was the original plan. But then my brain was like, but metallic watercolors. And then I ended up painting both of them because I was like, I did one with just like kind of golds and then one in more like traditional colors because I was having fun. So anyway, after I melted everything, I used my my microfiber cloth to remove the excess anti-static powder. And then for the coloring, I'm using the Altenew or Artistry by Altenew, their metallic watercolors. I've had this set for a little bit. Up until now, I've only used it for splatter because, metallic splatter, hello. And I wanted to paint with it because these colors are shiny and my inner magpie was curious. I gotta say, I'm loving it. Anyway, I put water in like the colors I was originally planning on using. And with any brand of metallic watercolor that I've used, and I've used many, you need to really like work the water into the wells. It's not like your traditional watercolors where you can just, touch a wet brush to the pan and pick up color like immediately. With metallics, just the way they are, you need to either let the water sit for a good while, like let it like soak in, or just work it really well with your brush, which you see me doing. That's just how they are. And then I just paint. And it's simple. I've super sped this up in editing, but it legit is simple. Anyone can do this. I'm not doing any special, layering or blending or light sources or anything. I am just filling in the images with, the different colors I chose. So with this first one, it was like golds. I used kind of the shimmery white color, and then I ended up bringing in like the coppery color too. And love it. Love it. I'm also getting like splotches of water on here because up in the upper right off screen, I have my jar of water that I like swirl my brush in to clean in between colors. And I always get a little aggressive with that. And I'm like flinging water everywhere, which not a big deal. It dries. It's not a big deal. So what I was saying about the cardstock, I have never had a problem using metallic watercolors on just plain black cardstock. Out on the market, there is black watercolor paper. I have some. I've honestly never used it because I've never had a problem with this. But like I was saying earlier, if your cardstock is thinner, you might run into a problem. You might not, because doing this and painting like this, I'm not adding a lot of water. You know, I'm just getting the metallic color, watercolor wet, picking it up with a brush, and then just painting it on. And I don't keep going back over it either, because normally when you're watercoloring, you know, you're adding extra water, you might be going back and adding layers, etc. And that's why you need watercolor paper, because it needs to be able to absorb a lot of liquid. Whereas with this, we're not doing that. It's just filling it in. Like, I can't stress how simple this is, because if I can do it, anyone can do it. But two, no special techniques. You know, you don't need to practice and practice. You just fill it in. It works. But this stamp set also just looks gorgeous, like heat embossed, you know, metallic heat embossing. Heat embossing this with white on the black would look amazing, or just other dark color cardstocks, you know, deep red, emerald green, navy blue. That was my original plan with this. And then my brain jumped to, well, what about black cardstock? And then, well, what about metallic watercolor? But so many options. So that first one I did the golds, and then this one I did a lot of the colors in this palette. And this is where I was like, oh yes. Because again, I have used many metallic watercolor palettes over the years. I love them. They're all fun. But some of them have a very kind of chalky look at times, just the different fillers that are used when making them. This set does not have that. And I've used almost all the colors. Just doing this, you know, these two cards in the watercolor, and it doesn't have that chalky cast to it. Not that any of that's the end of the world. I just thought I would mention that. I am loving this palette. And yeah, these were so fun to color in, and it didn't take that long, even without the sped up, you know, editing in post. So once they were dry, which again, didn't take very long because I wasn't adding much water, I used the coordinating wafer die, which die cuts this into a literal frame. And you could easily make this into a shaker card. That is another great option. Just back this with acetate, pop it up with foam tape, fill it with your shakery bits. It'd be amazing. I didn't do that because I'm going more for like the texture and the metallics. So after I had die cut those, I took the center, like leftover pieces of cardstock, and I am going to heat emboss a sentiment from another Picket Fence set. This is Picket Fence set. This is the Deck the Halls stamp set, and a little fiddly trying to line up this like scraggly piece of cardstock, but waste not, want not. So I used my anti-static powder tool on those pieces of cardstock as well, and then stamped the big Joy to the World sentiment with the clear embossing ink, and then I used the same gold embossing powder, coating that, and then repeat the process on the second piece. And I was just making sure that I had enough margin around the sentiment. That's what I kept checking, so that, because I'm going to die cut this with the coordinating wafer die as well, because there is a coordinating die set for the sentiment set. So after I got the embossing powder in place, same thing, melt this with my heat tool. Ooh and ah over the magic of it all. I love it. And then use my microfiber cloth to remove that excess anti-static powder, because that stuff shows up so nicely on dark cardstock, especially black cardstock. So I'll remove that, and then I'll use the coordinating wafer die to die cut these sentiments. And then the other wafer die I used is the A2 Simple Plaid cover plate die. Now, when I die cut these, I didn't use a shim, and this again is fairly heavyweight black cardstock. And so all the pieces kind of stayed, except for those two little pieces. All the pieces kind of stayed in the die cut, which I was like, oh, I'm going with this. Because normally what I like to do anyway is with cover plate type dies, I like to do tone on tone. So you can see my card base is also black cardstock. And I was just going to adhere the plaid like on top of it. But since all those pieces stayed in, I was like, I'm not going to take the time to pop these out. I love this. It looks more almost like it was embossed versus die cut. So yeah, I could have popped those pieces out because, you know, on that one, they were already starting to come out. But no, I just went with it. So on my card base, which are also black cardstock, and they're A2 card bases, top folding, I applied glue. And it looks like I'm applying like an insane amount of glue, but that's just my camera playing tricks on everyone. It is very thin glue. Like I've applied it very thin, so you can see it's not oozing out anywhere, etc. I wanted to make sure I completely covered the card front so that none of those other little pieces end up just popping off. So once those were adhered, I stuck my big acrylic blocks on just to hold everything down, let the glue dry. And then I'm using some thin foam strips to pop up this frame. And like I said, you could back this with some acetate, pop it up with the foam, and make it into a shaker, and it would look amazing. But I just wanted to create a bit of dimension. I wasn't in a shaker mood. So I just put the thin foam strips on the back of the frame and then pop that onto my card front. And then I'm going to use the same foam strips to pop up the sentiment as well. So it just gives it that bit of dimension. And then the simple plaid background, you know, just straight black, but it looks almost quilted the way that turned out, which was just a happy coincidence that everything stayed connected. It doesn't happen very often. It's when I want it to, you know, it does, everything pops out. But again, I would have just glued it to the black card base and it would have looked great as well. So after I got those adhered, I grabbed just thinner white cardstock. This is like Neenah 80-pound cardstock. And I'm going to stamp that frame onto these panels. And I'm using just a light sort of goldish yellow ink. This is just butternut fresh dye ink from Altenew. And I use that versus like a gold metallic ink. I do not like stamping, like especially like a full, like larger patterns like this, with metallic inks on what will be the inside of my cards, because metallic inks and like pigment inks, etc., are kind of annoying to try and write over when you're writing to the recipient. And I would rather avoid it. So I prefer using just dye inks whenever possible, unless it's like something just little. So that's why I went with this butternut fresh dye ink, because it's kind of a goldish tone, a little subtle, you know, and won't drive me crazy when I'm trying to write to the recipient. So after I stamped that, I took another sentiment from the Deck the Halls set and I stamped that in the center with black ink. And then after I've got these stamped, I'll then trim down these panels to slightly smaller than A2 size. So I end up trimming down to about 4 by 5¼ inches. So yeah, just like so. I just trimmed it down and then trimmed it down just a little bit more so that when I adhere these to the insides of the cards, the black card base will also just frame it out and make it look a little nice. So I'm going to get those adhered onto the insides. And then as my final bit of embellishment, I'm using, yet again, the Picket Fence North Pole. Is it North Pole? That's what they're called, I think. Yeah, North Pole. And even though I didn't make shaker cards, that's probably one of the reasons I like the Picket Fence gem mixes so much, is just holding the container. It's like, I'll just sit here and play with them. Anyway, I added some of those because there's some like clear ones and some kind of gold tone in there. So that was perfect. I was like, ooh, I'll use those on this card. And then there's like red ones and green ones, you know, it's just a good Christmas mix. And I'm going to use those on the other card. So I just use little dabs of my craft tacky glue and then pop those little gems into place, just picking them up with my little embellishment wand and then pressing them into the glue. And then I just need to let the glue dry and these cards will be complete. So there we go. Got the last one there, let the glue dry. And there I've got 2 black and gold and metallic holiday cards with that texture. And it almost looks like it's quilted. I really like that. You can't go wrong with a plaid anyway. And plaid wafer dies are just super fun. So as always, thank you all so much for hanging out with me during this video. I hope you enjoyed. And like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to all of the things in the description box below the video. So you can check that out below if you are interested. And yeah, thanks for watching, for thumbs upping and commenting. That does help a lot. It just tells the robot overlords you like what you see, you know, the algorithms, all the things. And subscribe if you haven't. We'd love to have you. And I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.